I knew I'd turned invisible the moment Daniel Price printed my contract, flipped through it like it was a diner menu, and smirked overkill. He circled a clause I'd revised half a dozen times, muttered something about paranoia, then yawned so loud it rattled the framed teamwork poster in HR. The clause indemnification for delivery failure, my legal Kevlar against a vendor we already knew cut corners. To him, it was dead weight. Fear-based lawyering, he called it. I'm Carla Donovan, 59 senior contracts manager in a manufacturing firm in Cleveland. 8 years here, and before that, I worked risk at a trucking company where we lost $3 million over a fax line. You never forget that panic, the cold sweat kind that smells like burnt coffee on deadline day. That's why I write contracts like bunkers. But Daniel, he came in from a flashy legal tech startup with a failure rate higher than a drunk on a tightrope. First week, $300 haircut buzzwords flying. His first act, slash, half our standard protections. His second A meeting, where he dropped phrases like modernization initiative and agility mindset while gutting my supplier agreements. By 9:15 a.m., he deleted arbitration clauses, escalation ladders, even the force majeure section. Months of my work erased with the enthusiasm of a toddler on too much sugar. The junior managers laughed along. Most hadn't read a full contract since the Bush administration. I just sipped my coffee, stared at my Q3 prep spreadsheets, and quietly saved the untouched contract to my personal archive, time-stamped, backed up, and filed away before Daniel stripped it down. I didn't argue. I've seen what happens to women who push back. The last contracts manager who corrected a male VP got exiled to strategic partnerships, which in corporate code means digital purgatory, endless Zoom calls with no real work. So I smiled, nodded, and said, "Looks great, Daniel," with the same warmth as a waitress refilling coffee for someone who just stiffed her on the tip. Inside, I was already writing the ending, not the petty kind, but the patient surgical kind. Because when the cracks showed, and they would, I'd have the receipts. Daniel's revisions landed in my inbox that afternoon with a subject line that made my molars ache. Refreshed agreement, leaner, smarter, stronger. He even BCC'd the COO like it was an opening night performance. I quietly forwarded my original draft to my personal email. The protection clauses, gone. The enforcement tree, gone. My sanity, hanging by a paperclip. The office kept humming. People grabbed sparkling water, made Slack jokes, and booked alignment check-ins. Meanwhile, I watched my legal fortress turn into a prefab shed. No one noticed. Not yet. The first time I saw Daniel in person, he was holding court in the break room, lecturing an intern about disruptive legal leadership while the kid just wanted to microwave oatmeal. Tailored suit, overconfident swagger, the kind that usually comes with a lawsuit or a second wife. Daniel wasn't just new, he was loud new. Execs adored him because he came from big law. Translation, he knew how to rack up billable hours and throw subordinates under buses so smoothly it looked like team building. His first email to legal read like a LinkedIn thought piece team. "We have an opportunity to revolutionize our contracts. Less friction, more action. Let's get agile." I muttered. Agile, huh? Last time, we got agile procurement. Forgot payment terms, and bought $800,000 worth of rubber gaskets we didn't need. But nobody listens to the woman behind the clauses. They think I'm here to format footnotes and ruin fun with fine print. Then came Thursday's 10 a.m. Zoom with half the legal team and a few execs who should have been golfing. Daniel shared one of our supplier templates, my template. "Let's walk through this beast," he said, zooming in like he was inspecting mold. He pointed at the remedies for breach clause. "Do we need all this? It's scaring vendors." That clause had saved us $2 million last year when a shipment arrived soaked in hydraulic fluid. Before I could speak, he'd moved on. "Force majeure, if there's a hurricane, we're all screwed anyway. Cut it. Arbitration. Keep it lean. No one wants Jersey court." Then he highlighted my supplier risk language and deleted it like spam. "This section's just CYA nonsense." He grinned. The execs chuckled. I stayed silent. And started my own file. One of them actually clapped. I'm pretty sure it was Doug from Ops, the same guy who once asked if indemnity meant we paid vendors when they screwed up. I stayed on mute, camera off. No one needed to hear my voice shake. That's what happens when you've poured a decade of hard-learned caution into clauses only for a buzzword, golden boy, to toss them like bad Tinder matches. Instead, I took a screenshot of the screen share, saved the meeting recording, and dropped my original draft into a hidden folder with the kind of name no one clicks: 2023 Q3 Vendor Guidelines V6 Backup. By the end of the call, Daniel was blessing his streamlined agreement and CCing me on a follow-up great collaboration today. Love where this is going. Let's move fast. His version of collaboration meant deleting other people's work and calling it innovation. That afternoon, the contract went to procurement. No red lines, no risk language, no arbitration path, just bullet points and blind faith. I closed the doc and stared at the ghost of my own caution. I wasn't just angry I'd been interrupted, and interruptions in my world smell like lavender toner and career derailment. But I kept quiet. You don't scream during the earthquake. You wait for the silence after. When Daniel sent the contract for signatures, the subject line was smug enough to set off fire alarms. Finalized. Lean agreement, fast execution, big win. It reeked of startup bravado. No backup plans, no guardrails, just a shiny PDF signature, legal CC'd, and the coup BCC'd. Then a gif of a rocket ship. Like we just invented Post-it notes from Mars instead of gutting the only legal framework keeping our supplier chain from collapsing like a Jenga tower in a wind tunnel. My finger hovered over reply. All longer than I care to admit. I wanted to send a line of pure scorched earth legal prose. With these deletions, we are no longer protected from supply chain, collapse, breach disputes, vendor non-performance acts of God shipping failures, or general corporate stupidity. Fingers crossed. But I didn't. Not yet. I knew how that movie ended. You don't get a second act when you call out the director mid-scene. I'd seen it before. The last person who challenged a shiny new VP got reassigned to a role with no reports, no projects, and no dignity, just a compliance audit portfolio and a desk by the break room printer. She lasted 3 months. Now she sells reclaimed barnwood on Etsy and sends me memes about escape plans. If you've made it this far, you already know the real wins aren't always loud, but they are unforgettable. And trust me, this wasn't the last time someone underestimated the wrong person. The next chapter takes this quiet victory and turns it into something even bigger, an opportunity that could change everything. You won't want to miss it. So subscribe now and join me for the next part of this journey. Let's keep proving one story at a time that experience, preparation, and patience will always outlast arrogance. See you in the next episode. So, I did what survivors do. I documented. Quietly, precisely. I opened my personal archive and created a new entry vendor contract, Daniel's edits. Indemnification clause, deleted. Delivery failure escalation, deleted. Arbitration jurisdiction replaced with mutual cooperation and good faith, non-enforceable. Meeting recording saved under contract review week 3, timestamped 10:41 a.m. Thursday. Backed up twice, once in the cloud, once on a password-protected USB the size of a Tic Tac hidden behind a loose outlet plate in my cubicle. No, I'm not paranoid. I'm underpaid, experienced, and have seen too many corporate horror stories to trust not to wipe my access when things go sideways. Looking at Daniel's email, the truth was bleak. He hadn't just trimmed fat, he'd cut off limbs. Clauses no one notices until they save you $20 million in court. But no one cheers for clauses that prevent disaster. They cheer for speed and simplicity, for rocket ship gifts and faux innovation. So I smiled, nodded in meetings, and said, "Looks great." Daniel with the same warmth as a waitress, watching a customer spill syrup on her shoes. Inside, I was already outlining the ending. Not petty revenge, patient surgical legal. The kind that leaves a courtroom silent when your name is read aloud on a document that should never have been altered. Daniel didn't know it, but he'd already signed the first page of his own deposition. I just had to wait for Act 2. It came 2 months later on a Tuesday morning that smelled like burnt coffee and mild dread. I was updating NDA templates when the first Slack ping hit. Then another. And another. I hadn't seen that many Slack pings since legal accidentally sent an unredacted HR termination file to the entire sales team. Our main gasket supplier for the Q3 production run hadn't just delayed delivery, they missed it completely. 3 full truckloads due at 8 a.m. never arrived. No warning, no backup plan. Just silence and a warehouse full of idle machines collecting dust while payroll bled overtime and procurement tried not to scream. I didn't need to check the contract to know what was missing. The per-day late penalty clause, gone. The escalation ladder authorizing us to claw back fulfillment through a third party, gone. The jurisdiction clause, keeping disputes in Ohio instead of their home turf, long gone. All deleted in that one glorious streamlining session Daniel had treated like improv night. By 9:30, I was sipping my second coffee, while finance calculated how many production hours we were losing each minute. Ops posted a photo of the assembly floor workers leaning on deactivated conveyor belts. Some playing cards. Then came the DMs. Didn't we used to have a clause for this? Didn't we fine vendors for late delivery? Wasn't there something about supplier failure I didn't answer? Not because I couldn't, because I shouldn't. Answering makes you a target. Daniel was still basking in his agile win, and if anyone linked this disaster to his edits, the political blowback would level the whole department. I just watched as chat morphed from panic to blame to damage control. At 10:12, Daniel burst out of his office like he'd left his Tesla running with a baby inside. He stormed into procurement, throwing around phrases like unacceptable breach vendor accountability and my personal favorite legal teeth. Cute, considering he'd pulled those teeth himself. Within minutes, he blamed procurement for not reconfirming delivery terms and claimed they'd failed to flag risks. Then he started citing clauses that didn't exist anymore, reading from an outdated playbook mid-nosedive. To their credit, procurement tried. They pulled up the final agreement, Daniel's masterpiece. A junior analyst, Tina, finally asked, "Wait, why doesn't this contract have a delay penalty clause?" The room went silent. Daniel's face turned that particular shade of red that says someone's fight-or-flight system just crashed. I watched from my desk like a woman watching a gas station slowly explode on live TV. My inbox flooded with forwarded emails and meeting invites titled Emergency Vendor Response Plan. A junior legal assistant leaned over and whispered, "Do we have any recourse here?" I told her, "Not under that version." At 1:47 p.m., I added a note to my private log Q3 supplier. Failure, no remedy language escalation, removed no arbitration clause, no late penalties. Legal exposure extreme. Predicted fallout initiated. Anticipate blame diversion. Eyes open. That night, I microwaved leftover pad thai and watched old courtroom dramas. I didn't feel rage or joy, just the cold click of inevitability. The contract had failed. The company was bleeding. And Daniel, he was standing ankle-deep in gasoline, holding a spent match, swearing he'd never touched the can. By Thursday, legal was at DEFCON 2. The immediate legal pathway for supplier breach meeting started 10 minutes early, the corporate equivalent of panic becoming policy. Daniel arrived last. Sleeves rolled jaw-tight, clutching a leather-bound notebook like it might sweat out answers if he gripped it hard enough. His PowerPoint title, Holding Vendors, Accountable, a Legal Strategy. You could almost hear the font sweating. For 20 minutes, he rattled off corporate war cries about breach protocols, damages, and reputational risk. He said we're covered 6 times. I counted. But every time someone asked, "Where exactly does the contract cover?" that his eyes darted like someone hearing footsteps in a horror movie. Then, procurement dropped the bomb the supplier had already lawyered up. Their response: a $25 million counterclaim for breach of contract, arguing we'd violated terms by canceling future orders without arbitration, causing irreparable harm to their logistics pipeline. They attached emails, shipment logs, and the killer blow clause from our signed agreement, Daniel's version, guaranteeing mutual cooperation before legal escalation. No definitions, no jurisdiction, no timelines, just vibes and wishful thinking. Daniel went ghost white. Daniel actually muttered, That's not possible. Then asked if someone had sent the wrong contract. Legal flipped to page 9 and pointed to the language, his language. It was right there in crystal clarity. We'll push back, he said quickly. I'll draft something. They won't win this. But his voice had no teeth left. That's when my name came up. Someone in the corner asked, didn't we have stronger language in earlier drafts? The room turned toward me like I was holding a fire extinguisher in a burning building. Daniel didn't speak, just stared, eyes hollow. I didn't gloat. I didn't smirk. I opened my email, clicked compose, attached one file, and typed subject RE. Vendor agreement language. Body please, see attached draft from June 2nd. Track changes enabled. No speech, no subtext. Just evidence, clean, time-stamped, lethal. The same file Daniel had gutted every strike-through and insertion glowing red like a crime scene reconstruction. The late penalty clause. There, the arbitration roadmap that would have spared us this disaster. There. 5 minutes later, I saw the read receipt. 5 more, and I heard the thud of his office door closing like a coffin lid. No one thanked me. No one apologized. Calls were made, strategy meetings launched, but the energy shifted. I wasn't just the woman with backups anymore. I was the one who saw it coming. Daniel had to sit in his glass-walled office while everyone stared at the contract he'd mocked as fear-based lawyering, the same one now standing between us and a courtroom bloodbath. He looked smaller, like he finally realized how much damage a red pen could cause. Then came the subpoena, subtle as a freight train. Discovery request vendor litigation. Every email draft meeting note and metadata file was on the chopping block. My version. The real version was entered into the record as Plaintiff's Exhibit A. Track changes lit up like warning lights in a cockpit. We were officially in deposition territory. You could almost hear the courtroom printer sweating. On Tuesday afternoon, I got the email from outside counsel deposition scheduling. My full name in the subject line. I stared at it, took a slow sip of coffee, and finally let out the laugh I'd been swallowing since June. It wasn't joy, it was release. Now, I wasn't just a contracts manager with a paper trail. I was the paper trail. The deposition took place in a corporate war room, the thermostat set 2 degrees too cold, just enough to make you shiver. Across from me, 2 opposing attorneys, a stenographer with dagger nails, and one very quiet Daniel, tapping his pen like Morse code for "oh God." The first 30 minutes were routine credentials, timelines, job title. Then came the pivot. Ms. Donovan. This draft, Exhibit A, authored by you, yes. And the clauses on delivery penalties, arbitration, enforcement, indemnification. All present in your version. They do not appear in the final signed contract. Correct? That's correct. Who removed them? Silence. I turned just enough to look at Daniel, letting the weight settle in the room. Then I reached into my bag, pulled out a flash drive, and slid it across the table. I have the screen recording from June East, I said evenly. Mr. Price reviewed the document live and deleted each section. You'll hear him call them bloated and not our vibe. The audio is clear. Even the stenographer paused, bracing for aftershocks. Daniel fumbled, tried to interject. The final contract was a collaborative product. No, I cut in my voice like a scalpel. That was your solo edit session. I was there, silent. That's on the recording too. One attorney asked if I'd had concerns. I nodded. Of course. I didn't voice them, because dissent wasn't operationally safe. But I documented everything. I'm cautious by trade. During the break, a junior lawyer from our side leaned over and whispered, "You just handed them the whole case, didn't you?" I only shrugged. I wasn't there to save face. I was there to provide facts, receipts, context, my tone, not vengeful, not bitter, just razor, clean. Daniel didn't realize it yet, but he'd stopped being general counsel the moment he deleted the indemnification clause. Now, he was just a footnote in a deposition transcript. Back at my desk, there was a new kind of quiet. Not awkward, not tense, reverent. Colleagues who once ignored my meeting invites now stepped aside in the hallway. One left a post-it on my monitor. Remind me never to piss you off. I kept it. It made a fine bookmark. I wasn't just pushing paper anymore. I was Exhibit A with a pulse, the keystone holding up a crumbling legal arch. And Daniel was beginning to understand what real risk management looked like. Courtroom 7 smelled of stale upholstery and old grudges. Justice didn't roar here, it coughed, stretched, and occasionally sharpened its nails. 3 hours in opposing counsel stood adjusted his collar like a prizefighter and said, "Your Honor, if I may direct your attention to Plaintiff's Exhibit A." He held up the printed version of my original draft, like it was sacred. Then he flipped to the appendix. The changelog, a surgical trail of red strike-throughs and margin comments, laid out Daniel's undoing. Line 47, late delivery penalties removed. Line 112, indemnification language deleted. Line 136, binding arbitration jurisdiction struck entirely. Each line hit the courtroom like a hammer on a coffin lid. The judge, an older woman with a stare that could collapse. Egos leaned forward, adjusted her bifocals, and read each clause silently. Then again, aloud. This clause, she said, pointing, would have provided the plaintiff a legal remedy for the missed delivery window. Yes, Your Honor. And this one arbitration instead of open litigation. Yes, Your Honor. She turned another page. And this would have indemnified the plaintiff against supplier disruptions. Yes, Your Honor. Then she looked up straight at Daniel. All of these, she said steadily, were removed by the defendant's general counsel. Daniel cleared his throat, scrambling for spin. There was a collaborative editing process. Daniel began, but the judge cut him off like a surgeon slicing through a lie. The metadata shows the deletions came from one user account. Your account. Is that correct? Silence. Yes, Your Honor, he finally mumbled. She let it hang in the air like smog. Then almost casually, she turned another page. And the original author of this draft. These clauses, these protections was... Opposing counsel didn't even look at me. He just gestured. Her full name, Your Honor. Senior contracts manager at the time. There it was, spoken into the record like a stone dropped into still water. My name echoing in a courtroom I never expected to stand in. I didn't move, didn't smirk. My eyes stayed forward, fixed on the judge's glasses as they caught the light. Beside me, Daniel shifted heat rising off his collar like steam from pavement, but I didn't turn. This wasn't about gloating. This was evidence outliving ego. The judge closed the file and rested her hands on the bench. It seems we're not here because protections weren't available. We're here because they were ignored. I didn't smile, but something in me, old coiled, finally exhaled. The silence that followed wasn't respectful. It was surgical. The kind that arrives after the body's been opened and the bleeding won't stop. Daniel was already sinking in his chair, staring at the defense table like it might sprout wings and fly him out of there. His tie had crawled up into his collarbone as if trying to strangle him out of mercy. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Then the judge tapped her papers once and looked at the defense like a grandmother deciding which grandkid just broke her favorite vase. One question before we proceed, she said. Will Mr. Price continue to represent your company in this matter? I didn't blink. No one did. The CEO 2 rows back stopped pretending to be furniture. He stood, cleared his throat, and muttered, We'll be reassessing counsel representation moving forward, Your Honor. No rescue. No shield. Just bureaucratic surrender wrapped in HR politeness. Daniel's jaw flexed, but no words came out. His pen slipped from his hand, hitting the table with a tiny clack that felt louder than a gavel. That was the moment ego deflated completely, when someone realizes they're not the main character, just the cautionary tale. Court adjourned an hour later. Outside, people shook hands in hushed tones, like they were leaving a wake. I didn't linger. I walked straight to my car, closed the door, and sat in silence. No music, no calls. Just the quiet certainty that something had shifted, and I hadn't raised my voice once to make it happen. 2 days later, the official email landed. Staff update, legal department restructuring. As part of an ongoing effort to streamline internal operations, we are making strategic changes to our legal team. Effective immediately, Daniel Price will be pursuing new opportunities outside the company. We thank him for his contributions and wish him well. No one replied. No one cried. By end of day, his office was cleared out, a sanitized crime scene. That afternoon, I returned from lunch to find a plain white envelope centered on my desk. No note, no ribbon, just my name in black ink sealed. Inside a formal letter acknowledging my contributions during the legal review and a one-time settlement bonus larger than anything I'd ever seen on company letterhead. At the bottom, for your integrity and foresight. Thank you. I folded it, slid it into my desk drawer, and told no one. This wasn't a parade moment. It wasn't champagne-worthy. It was clarity. Quiet, earned clarity. The kind that doesn't shout, the kind that takes root in your bones. I'd been called redundant, excessive, fear-based. Told my job was to streamline, not protect. And yet, when everything cracked, the only thing holding up the company's spine was the woman they'd ignored in meetings. I didn't need an apology. I had Exhibit A and the silence that followed. That was my justice. It was a Thursday night, the kind where the bar lights are dim enough to forgive every wrinkle and regret. I sat across from my best friend Marcy, 2 drinks into a quiet celebration. No confetti, no speeches, just the low hum of something done right, even if no one paraded it down the hallway. Marcy raised an eyebrow over her whiskey sour. So how's post-courtroom life? Feel like Joan of Arc, or just mildly radioactive? I smirked, reached for my phone, and that's when the notification hit. LinkedIn, 1 new message request, from Stephanie Lynn, General Counsel at Agricor. Agricor, our biggest competitor. The company that once sent passive-aggressive holiday baskets and tried to poach our entire compliance team with Amazon gift cards and ergonomic chairs. I opened the message. Saw the ruling. Brilliant work. We should talk about opportunities that come with a little more hazard pay. Coffee next week, I stared at it. Then at the half-melted ice in my glass. Then back at Marcy. Is that who I think it is? She asked. I nodded slowly and lifted my drink a fraction. To redundant clauses in job offers that come with Kevlar. She clinked my glass like it was gospel. The bar noise faded into a quiet hum. The hum of being known. Not as a footnote in someone else's email chain. Not as the overly cautious or process-heavy woman, but as the name printed bold and unredacted on the public record of a courtroom victory no one could spin away. Later that night, I pulled up the court ruling. Final copy, filed and time-stamped. Appendix B, Plaintiff's Exhibit 1. Original contract draft by Carla Donovan. No edits, no deletions, no spin. Just the truth etched in legal font stored in a federal archive with my name on it like a signature. I didn't smile. I exhaled. And finally, I closed the file. You've just walked with me through months of silent preparation, quiet endurance, and one of the most satisfying moments of my career, watching the truth stand taller than ego in a courtroom. Now I want to hear from you. If you've ever been in a workplace where your expertise was brushed aside, your contributions ignored, or your hard-earned safeguards dismantled by someone chasing quick wins, then you know exactly how this felt. So tell me, what would you have done in my shoes? Would you have spoken up sooner, waited, or documented every move like I did? Leave me your thoughts in the comments, because I read them all, and your perspective could help someone else facing the same kind of storm. And if you felt that quiet satisfaction right along with me when the judge read my clauses aloud, give this story a like. Share it with someone who needs the reminder that preparation and integrity are worth more than bluster and shortcuts. That's how we keep these stories alive. Most of all, remember this. You don't have to raise your voice to change the outcome. You don't have to meet arrogance with more arrogance. Sometimes the most powerful move is to collect the facts, wait for the right moment, and let the truth do the talking. Quiet power isn't weakness, it's precision. So, if my story struck a chord with you, hit that subscribe button. Not just for me, but for every quiet professional out there who's been told they're too cautious or too much. Let's keep building a community that knows the value of doing things right and isn't afraid to stand by it. Now it's your turn. Tell me your story.